There is a plant that goes against the basic rules of modern agriculture. It produces nearly twice the yield of potatoes. It survives freezing temperatures that wipe out wheat. And once it is planted, there is no need to buy seed again. It keeps growing on its own year after year. For thousands of years, it was a safety net against hunger. Then it disappeared. It was not abandoned because it failed. It was pushed aside because it worked too well. A crop that grows freely, feeds people without cost, and spreads on its own cannot be controlled. And anything that cannot be controlled cannot be sold. I'm Barbara O'Neill, and this is the story of a perennial plant that lived through the rise and fall of empires, endured 2 world wars, and still grows quietly beneath the ground today. But before we continue, I want to share a small gift. I'm giving away a copy of my best-selling book, Self-Heal. To enter, simply like this video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments why you'd love to win this book. I always enjoy reading your stories. Now let's get started. The record begins along the eastern coast of North America in 1605. A French explorer named Samuel de Champlain stepped onto the shores of what would later become Massachusetts. The Algonquin people greeted him with a meal. One dish included a rough, knobby root they called Kaishuk Panak, meaning sunroot. Champlain tasted it and noted in his journal that it compared favorably to the artichoke back home. He loaded his ship with the tubers and carried them back to France. This plant was the sunchoke, Helianthus tuberosus, a perennial sunflower root native to the Great Lakes region and the eastern forests. Long before Europeans arrived, Native American tribes understood its value. The Iroquois shared a story passed down through generations. When Earth Woman died while giving birth to twin sons, Sapling and Flint, the first sunchokes grew from her feet. The crop was seen as a gift born from sacrifice. Above ground, the plant grows taller than a man, reaching 8 to 10 feet high, topped with yellow flowers that track the sun. But the real value stays hidden below the surface. Underground, the plant forms knobby tubers in shades of white, purple, and gold. Instead of starch, they store sweetness as inulin. Tribes from the Atlantic coast to the Great Plains planted them once and harvested them year after year. The plant spread through underground rhizomes, forming dense networks beneath the soil. A single patch could feed a community for generations. In 1805, the Lewis and Clark expedition nearly starved while crossing the Dakotas. They survived because of Sacagawea. She located underground mouse caches filled with thousands of stored sunchokes gathered for winter. She dug them up, roasted them over open fire, and fed the expedition. The tubers could be eaten raw, crisp like water chestnuts, or cooked until soft. They could be dried and ground into flour that lasted through winter. They survived freezing temperatures, staying in the soil until needed, ready whenever food ran out. The production numbers were extreme. One plant could yield 3 to 6 pounds. An acre produced more food than wheat and more food than corn in cold climates. Later studies confirmed what early growers already knew: up to 64,000 pounds per acre without irrigation. Potatoes, even under ideal conditions with irrigation, produced around 53,000. This crop was not about comfort or taste. It was about staying alive. It was a foundation food. When Champlain introduced sunchokes to France in 1605, Europe was struggling with repeated food shortages. The soil was worn down and famines returned again and again. Potatoes were viewed with fear, believed to cause disease. The sunchokes spread quickly. In France, it became known as topinambo. In Italy, it was called girasole, meaning sunflower. It fed poor families, livestock, and even royal households. It required no fertilizer and almost no attention. planted in spring, harvest in fall, leave pieces in the soil, and the next year a full crop returned on its own. University trials conducted centuries later confirmed the old knowledge. Sunchokes produced about 30,000 calories per acre. Potatoes produced around 20,000. Sunchokes matched corn, the most widely grown grain on earth. But problems emerged. The tubers were uneven and misshapen, hard to clean, and difficult to harvest using machines. They spoiled faster than potatoes and could not sit in storage for long periods. The inulin caused digestive issues for people who were not used to eating it. By the mid-17th century, the potato took over. It was larger, smoother, and easier to store. It fit neatly into the systems Europe relied on: warehouses, markets, and taxation. The sunchoke faded away, reduced to animal feed and food for the poor, grown only by those with no better options. In North America, settlers labelled it a weed. They favoured European crops like wheat and potatoes, crops that required new seed purchases every year, crops that could be managed, measured, taxed, and sold. The sunchoke did not disappear. It survived along roadsides, in ditches, and in forgotten fields. It was no longer farmed or respected. It simply waited. Then came World War I. Germany was cut off by an Allied blockade. The winter of 1916 became known as the Turnip Winter. People were forced to eat rutabagas meant for animals because potato crops had failed. Thousands died. Sunchokes saved some lives. They grew wild in abandoned areas. They could not be blocked or taken away. They remained underground until someone needed them badly enough to dig. World War II brought even greater hardship. In France, after 1940, Nazi forces took control of nearly 80% of the nation's food supply. Potatoes were shipped to German troops. French families were left with scraps, rutabagas, and sunchokes, vegetables once reserved for pigs. For 9 years, millions survived on topinambour. People hated it. The tubers were small and time-consuming to clean. Eating them daily caused severe digestive problems, but they kept children alive when almost nothing else remained. The Nazi hunger plan stripped food from occupied countries while millions went hungry. But sunchokes could not be managed or restricted. They were tough, unmanaged, and kept growing anyway. In the Netherlands, the winter of 1944 became known as the Hunger Winter. Around 22,000 people died from starvation. The government released emergency cookbooks listing edible wild plants, tulip bulbs, and sunchokes. Families broke frozen soil with bare hands, searching for buried tubers. After liberation, survivors refused to eat them again. An entire generation connected topinambour with death, occupation, and the darkest years of their lives. In France, grandparents who lived through the war would not allow it on the table. They were done with it. The vegetable that helped people survive became linked to suffering. It vanished from markets, recipes, and public awareness. But war did not change what sunchokes actually are. They contain 73 calories per 100 grams, about 2 grams of protein, and 429 milligrams of potassium, more than bananas. They also provide iron, copper, magnesium, and B vitamins. Their main strength is inulin, which makes up 50 to 60% of the tuber by weight. Few plants on Earth contain more. Inulin passes through the stomach without being digested and reaches the colon intact. There, beneficial bacteria, especially Bifidobacterium, feed on it. These bacteria multiply and create short-chain fatty acids. This lowers gut pH, blocks harmful microbes, and improves absorption of calcium and magnesium that would otherwise be lost. Research showed that sunchokes reduce constipation and support immune health. Some findings suggest they may help stop certain cancers before they develop. Unlike potatoes, sunchokes do not spike blood sugar. The inulin slowly turns into fructose. In the 1980s, diabetics wrote letters saying they ate sunchokes every day and cut their insulin use by half. What had long existed in folk medicine was later supported by research. The plant also restores land. It is perennial, meaning it does not need yearly replanting. It requires no tilling and causes no erosion. Its deep roots break compacted soil. It survives drought, poor soil, and temperatures down to -30 degrees Celsius. Where annual crops fail, sunchokes keep growing. They were built for unstable conditions. In the 1960s in California, a produce wholesaler named Frida Kaplan noticed knobby tubers sitting unsold. The name was the problem. Jerusalem artichoke confused buyers. It had nothing to do with Jerusalem and was not an artichoke. The name came from the Italian word girasole, meaning sunflower, which English speakers had altered over time. Kaplan renamed it sunchoke and trademarked the name in 1980. She sold them in 1-pound bags with simple recipes. Sales increased by 600%. Chefs took interest. Raw, they were crisp and slightly sweet. Cooked, they turned smooth and rich. High-end restaurants in San Francisco added sunchoke soups, roasted sides, and purees to their menus. At the same time, something larger was taking shape. In the 1980s, the farm crisis devastated Midwest farmers. A new idea emerged: grow sunchokes for food, animal feed, fuel, and freedom from corporate supply chains. They produced high yields, returned year after year, and could be turned into ethanol through inulin fermentation. On paper, they were ideal. The plan failed financially. There was no market and no processing system. Farmers lost money, but the idea did not disappear. Sunchokes remained a crop tied to self-reliance and local control. In France, many years after the war, chefs brought topinambour back into kitchens. They were labeled légumes oubliés, forgotten vegetables, no longer tied to suffering but to heritage. By the early 2000s, sunchokes showed up in farmers' markets across North America and Europe. Permaculture groups called them the ultimate crop. Plant once, harvest forever. Today, researchers study them for use on marginal land. As climate change damages wheat and corn production, sunchokes remain an option. They were built for extremes. So why aren't they everywhere? Industrial agriculture relies on uniform crops. Plants that ripen together can be machine harvested, shipped without damage, stored for months, and look identical on store shelves. Sunchokes do none of that. They mature unevenly and spoil quickly. Potato harvesters leave half the tubers behind because they cling to roots or are too small. Harvesting them properly requires special equipment or manual labor. Neither option scales well, neither brings strong profit. Then there is the inulin issue. The same compound that makes sunchokes valuable also causes gas. Gut bacteria need time to adjust. Modern diets do not allow that adjustment period. People expect immediate comfort. The nickname spread, fartichoke. Even Julia Child once asked if the gas problem could be solved. It can. Longer cooking breaks down inulin into fructose. Eating small portions helps. Gradual exposure allows the gut to adapt, but that takes patience, and industrial food systems are not patient. So sunchokes stay limited to farmers' markets, specialty growers, and home gardens where they spread aggressively. That aggressive growth is exactly the point. Sunchokes are nearly impossible to eliminate without chemicals. Any broken piece can sprout again. In Europe, they are labeled invasive when they escape cultivation. That word is often used for plants that succeed without human permission, plants that do not depend on us. Sunchokes reveal something systems prefer to hide. Abundance does not require control. Perennial plants return on their own. They do not need seed purchases, chemicals, or approval from corporations. They adapt, survive, and outlast. Crops that persist without profit are treated as problems. Sunchokes produce more than potatoes, repair damaged soil, and feed communities without middlemen. They cannot be patented or owned. They do not generate steady revenue. So they are labeled outdated, difficult, or impractical. This pattern repeats across history. Amaranth was banned by conquistadors because of its cultural power. Tepary beans disappeared when machines could not process them. Mesquite was cleared to make way for cattle, destroying what the tree protected. Fava beans were replaced by pills, sold for hundreds of dollars, despite growing freely in gardens. Indigenous crops that support independence are removed, not because they fail, but because they work without control. Sun chokes survived because they could not be wiped out. Most people alive today have never tasted one. They have never grown it. They do not know that planting 3 tubers in fall can produce 30 by spring. That knowledge is still there underground. Climate change is accelerating. Heat, drought, and floods are becoming normal. The crops feeding billions were developed for stable conditions. That stability is fading. Sun chokes were shaped by instability. They store energy deep in the soil, beyond drought. They survive cold that kills potatoes. They produce more than corn using about 1/3 the water. When industrial systems break down, sun chokes will still be here. They have been for centuries. French families survived occupation by eating topinambur they despised. Dutch mothers dug frozen soil to feed starving children. Native Americans called it kaishuk panak, sun root, a gift tied to sacrifice. Names shift, memories fade, then they return. The plant never left, perennial, underground, waiting for hands willing to dig. We did not lose the sun choke, we simply forgot about it. Forgetting is not permanent. The knowledge remains in the soil, in wild patches, escaped tubers, and gardens where 3 become 30. This crop teaches through survival and refusal to disappear. Abundance was always here, growing freely in the dirt. If this opened something for you, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Every share helps protect what others tried to erase. The next vault opens soon.